They thought I was gone. And with me, my silence. But as my family gathered in that church basement, faces painted in fake grief, the lawyer's voice cracked the air. By the will of Clara Mae Thompson, she leaves her entire estate to none of you. The gasps were real this time. My daughter clutched her pearls, my sons muttered under their breath, and my granddaughter whispered, "She couldn't do this to us." Oh, but I did. Because the truth they buried with my coffin was far darker than death itself. They thought I didn't know. The lies, the money stolen, the nights I sat hungry while they spent my pension on their pleasures. But I watched. I forgave in silence. And when I finally wrote that will, I made sure the world would know what love looks like, when it's no longer blind. Before betrayal wore my name, I was just Grandma Clara, a woman who cooked, cleaned, and prayed for a family that never looked back once they walked out my front door. My little house in Georgia was built with the sweat of my husband, Harold. God rest his soul. When he passed, I kept the porch light burning for my children, believing they'd always come home. My eldest, Ruth, was the pride of the town. A nurse with a sharp tongue and sharper ambition. My son, David, talked big dreams, but never stayed long enough to chase them. And Angela, my youngest, loved me most once. But love, like milk, can sour quick when money gets involved. When I retired, I thought peace had finally found me. My savings, my home, my memories, everything I worked for was theirs to inherit. But peace doesn't live where greed moves in. And soon, the cracks beneath our smiles began to show. The mornings in my house always began the same. The kettle whistled, the sun crept through the lace curtains, and the smell of biscuits filled the kitchen. I'd hum old hymns while setting out 3 extra plates, hoping maybe one of them would surprise me with a visit. Sometimes they did. Ruth would stop by on Sundays, rushing through her words like love was another chore to check off. "Mama, you shouldn't be cooking so much," she'd say, glancing at her phone instead of me. Still, she'd take the leftovers home every time. David came less often, but when he did, he always smiled wide. Too wide. "You know I love you, Ma," he'd say before asking, almost shyly, for a little help until payday. Payday never came, and Angela, she still hugged me like a child, but her hugs had grown shorter, her eyes more tired. The laughter we once shared at the kitchen table now echoed like a ghost. At night, I'd sit by the window, rocking in Harold's old chair, listening to the cicadas hum. The world felt smaller now, quieter, lonelier. I told myself it was just age, that families drift, that love doesn't always sound like it used to. But then, one evening, I overheard something I wasn't meant to hear, soft whispers outside my door, voices plotting in the dark. My name. My will. And just like that, the quiet peace I'd built began to crumble. That night, the house didn't feel like mine anymore. The ticking clock on the wall seemed louder, almost mocking. I sat in Harold's old chair, clutching my robe, pretending not to hear the whispers floating from the porch. But I heard them, clear as thunder on a quiet night. "She won't last long," Ruth's voice hissed. "Once she's gone, everything splits 3 ways." "You sure she already signed the papers?" David asked. "Almost. Just keep her calm till it's done." My blood froze. My own children, planning my ending like it was business. I stayed silent that night. But silence, I learned, cuts deeper than words. The next morning, Ruth arrived with her polished smile and her nurse's uniform, smelling like lavender and guilt. "Mama, you look tired. Let me help you sort your mail." Her hands moved fast, too fast. Bills disappeared into her purse. A document I hadn't seen before slid under another stack. "What's that, baby?" "Just insurance papers," she said smoothly. "You don't need to worry." Later that day, David came by, all swagger and soft lies. "Hey, Ma, You know I love you, right? Of course, son. Could you co-sign this little loan for me? Ruth said it's safer that way. His pen trembled, but my heart trembled more. I trusted them because love does that. It blinds you even when your eyes are open. Weeks passed, and strange things started happening. Letters from the bank stopped coming. My card declined at the grocery store. When I called the bank, the clerk hesitated before saying, "Ma'am, your account was transferred under joint authorization to your daughter, Ruth Thompson." The floor felt like it vanished beneath me. That evening I called Ruth. "Baby, what's this about my savings?" "Mama," she sighed, "we just helped move things around. You're getting older. You need our guidance." "Guidance?" My voice cracked. "Or control? Don't make this harder than it has to be." She hung up before I could reply. The next day I found Angela sitting in her car outside, crying. "Mama, I didn't mean to. Ruth said it was just paperwork. I thought we were protecting you." "Protecting me?" I whispered. "By stealing my name?" She broke down, holding my hands like a child. But even her tears couldn't wash away what they'd done. By the time winter rolled in, I had lost everything. My home, my savings, even the porch light Harold once hung for me. Ruth sold the house before I could protest. David vanished with his cut. Angela stayed silent, too ashamed to visit. When the moving truck pulled away, I stood in the empty yard clutching my Bible. Every corner of that house carried a memory. Harold's laughter, Ruth's first steps, the smell of peach cobbler cooling on the windowsill. Now it was gone. All of it. The neighbors watched quietly from their porches. Pity looked ugly on their faces. The care home they placed me in was small, but kind. Nurse Ella brushed my hair every morning and called me Miss Clara. She didn't know I used to own 2 acres of land. She didn't know I once fed a whole family from that kitchen. In that quiet room, I began to write. Every night after dinner, I filled page after page, names, dates, the truth they thought would die with me. When my lawyer, Mr. Henderson, came for a visit, I handed him an envelope sealed with trembling fingers. "Everything you need is in here," I told him. "Should I deliver it before or after?" "After," I interrupted. "After the funeral." He looked at me, puzzled. "Are you sure, Mrs. Thompson?" "I've never been more sure. They took everything from me. But they won't take my story." That night, as rain tapped against the window, I smiled for the first time in months. They thought they'd buried my will with my body. They had no idea. I'd already written a new one. The church was packed that morning. Faces I hadn't seen in years filled the pews, whispering in polite tones. My portrait rested near the altar. Me in my Sunday hat, smiling like I knew something they didn't. Because I did. Ruth sat in the front row, pretending to dab her eyes. David looked restless, tapping his foot like he was waiting for a bus. Angela kept her head low, clutching a handkerchief, her guilt heavy as stone. When the preacher finished his sermon, Mr. Henderson, my lawyer, stepped forward with a stack of envelopes. His voice echoed through the silence. "As per the request of the late Mrs. Clara May Thompson, I will now read her final will." Ruth straightened up. David smirked. They could already see dollar signs. "To my beloved children, Ruth, David, and Angela." A pause. "I leave. Nothing." The words hit like thunder. Gasps spread through the crowd. David jumped up, shouting, "What kind of joke is this?" Ruth's voice shook with rage. "She can't do this. We're her family." But Mr. Henderson didn't flinch. He pulled out another envelope and continued. "However, Mrs. Thompson did leave a statement, her own words." He unfolded a handwritten letter, my handwriting, and began to read. "My dear children, if you're hearing this, I've already gone to a place where truth no longer hurts. I gave you my youth, my money, my home, and my forgiveness, until you mistook it for weakness. Love without respect is slavery. and I refuse to wear those chains in my grave. I leave my savings, property, and every penny of my estate to the Haven Home for Mothers and Children, the same shelter I once donated to quietly. Those women reminded me what real family feels like. Gratitude without greed. The room fell silent. Ruth's face drained of color. Angela began to cry softly. David stormed out, muttering curses that echoed through the church hall. But the letter wasn't done. To Angela, I still love you. I saw your tears when you realized what Ruth had done. You were too afraid to stop her, but I forgive you. To David, you always wanted quick riches. I hope now you learn the value of honest work. And to Ruth, my firstborn, I once believed you'd carry my name with pride, but you carried my pain instead. This is not revenge, my child. It's a reminder. What you take from others will one day be taken from you. Mr. Henderson folded the letter quietly. The crowd stayed frozen in stunned silence. Then, from the back of the church, a woman rose. A young mother from the shelter, holding her baby. Mrs. Thompson changed my life, she said softly. She gave us hope when we had nothing. Her words filled the room with a warmth that no inheritance could buy. And as sunlight broke through the stained glass, landing right on my portrait, it almost looked like I was smiling again. Not out of vengeance, but peace. Because sometimes, love's final lesson isn't in what you give, it's in what you take back. In the end, Grandma Clara didn't just write a will, she wrote a lesson carved in truth. Love isn't proven by words, but by how we protect the hands that once fed us. Her children chased wealth and lost the only treasure that mattered, a mother's heart. They buried her body, but her wisdom rose from the grave like a mirror, showing them what greed had turned them into. Sometimes, justice doesn't need a courtroom. It only needs time. Because time reveals everything: lies, loyalty, and love's true worth. Clara's story reminds us that family is not defined by blood, but by kindness that asks for nothing in return.